All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the town of Huntington. I'm going to make a few introductions here. We have with us today Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone, Nassau County Executive Ed Mangano. From the Senate, we've got Senator Carl Mussolino. From the Assembly, Assemblymember Steve Engelbright, right here. Also Michael Fitzpatrick, Assemblymember Chad Lupinacci, Assemblymember Michael Montesano, Assemblymember Edward Ra, and then Supervisor Larry Cantwell from the town of East Hampton. Supervisor Ed Romaine from the town of Brookhaven. Supervisor Joe Saladino from Oyster Bay. Supervisor Jay Schneiderman from the town of Southampton. And then Dick O'Kane, who's President, Building and Construction Trades Council of Long Island, and certainly all the elected officials here and environmental advocates that are with us today. We welcome you all. So today's program, we're going to hear in a moment from Governor Andrew Cuomo. Shortly thereafter, we'll have County Executive Bellone come up and say some words, and County Executive Mangano to follow. So today's announcement is an environmental announcement, and that is in and of itself no small issue this day and age. We're seeing an epic retreat from environmental protection at the federal level at an age where our storms are becoming more frequent, more powerful. Contamination in our drinking water and our water supplies is becoming more prevalent than ever. And New York sees things differently. New York sees environmental protection much differently than our friends down at the federal level. And we're leading. We're leading in New York. We're leading in New York. We're leading in New York because we have to, and there's no choice but to. And we're leading in New York because we have a governor who truly believes not just in the environment and its protection, but in putting resources behind it, in putting programs in place to protect the environment, and has emerged not only as, in my estimation, the best environmental governor that this state's ever had, but right now is the leading environmental governor in this nation at a time when we do not have national leadership. So I am proud to call him my boss, and I am proud to welcome him here up to the podium to address us today on this very exciting issue. So please give him a warm round of applause, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Halesite Fire Department for their hospitality today. Thank you to all who are here. Before I begin, a special note that we had sent the New York National Guard, 106th Rescue Wing out of West Hampton, to go down and help on Texas on Hurricane Harvey. 546 rescues they did. Is that amazing? Let's give them a round of applause. And the Halesite Fire Department that collected over $80,000 in donations for Texas, so let's give them a round of applause. You know, it is amazing to me still, when things are at their worst, people are at their best. We saw it with Hurricane Sandy, where the nation is now seeing it with what's going on in Texas. Everybody rallies to do whatever they can to help Americans or New Yorkers in need. And I'm proud of how this state responded. We say a prayer that we don't have the same situation now in Florida and Puerto Rico because there's another storm. And anyone who doesn't see a new pattern of extreme weather, I think is in a state of denial, you know. We have hurricanes, we have floods, we have all sorts of situations in the state that we've never had before. I want to thank all my colleagues from the legislature. We're about to announce an exciting program, and nothing happens without the legislature, and the legislature will tell you that. So let's give them a round of applause. I also want to thank Stony Brook University and Cornell, which have been great partners to us. They are smart, they are on it, and let's give them a round of applause and thank them. And my two colleagues, two great county executives whose leadership has really made a difference, Steve Ballone and Ed Mangano. Let's give them a round of applause. To a great DEC commissioner who he gives me the credit, but we do have the best environmental program in the country. And it's because we have the best environmental commissioner in the country, Basil Sagos. Let's give him a round of applause. The environment is becoming more and more of an issue. Why? Because the problems in the environment are a function of evolution, and they've been getting worse incrementally. And we didn't do anything for a long time. We didn't pay attention. And now the bill is coming due. You know, it's like when you get as old as I am, and you go to the doctor, and they start to talk to you about cholesterol and the problem you have with cholesterol. You know, it's not what you did this week and last week. It was the entire lifetime of bad habits that get you to this point. The same is true with the environment. It's 50 years of bad habits. It's 50 years of not even understanding what we were doing. We had these great manufacturing plants. And they were doing all sorts of great manufacturing, using all sorts of chemicals, and dumping it in the ground. And we never said to ourselves, well, what happens when it goes into the sewer system? You know, what happens when you dump it on the ground? The thought was, it's gone, disappeared, never happened. That's not the case. Nothing is ever gone. Nothing ever really flushes, you know. In some ways, the earth is like a sponge, and you pour fluids into it. And yeah, they discharge out the other side, but that sponge holds a lot of the chemicals and a lot of the contaminants. And they've built up year after year after year after year. And you have all sorts of chemicals that now combine with each other in ways that we never even imagined. And it becomes a problem in water pollution. You see it in the coastline, and we're going to be primarily talking about the coastline today, but you see it in the groundwater with really frightening results. This is not just New York, this is all across the country. We're just starting to test groundwater for chemicals that nobody even thought to test for. We have situations in upstate New York where the groundwater is polluted from a manufacturing plant that no longer exists and hasn't existed for decades. But what they left behind is still in that groundwater. Some of these chemicals you can filter out with a very expensive process. Some chemicals you can't get out of the water, period. Once they're there, we don't even have the technology to filter them out. So in many ways, we now have a new recognition of a problem that we caused over many, many years, and we are now trying to remediate the damage from decades past. We have to be aggressive about it. There is no time to waste. You're talking about a matter of health. On Long Island, you're talking about a fundamental economic driver, which is the use of the water. And we're aggressive about it because you have to be. Long Island, especially. What makes Long Island Long Island? Part of the attraction is that it is an island. It has beautiful coastline, bays, harbors. You see it in Huntington. You can live, work, and play on Long Island, right? My sister loves to say, you know, when you live on Long Island, you never have to take a vacation because you're on Long Island, right? And it's true. That has been the essence of one of the attractions for Long Island. But over the years, Long Island, like every other part of the state, every other part of the nation, the pollution has been getting worse and worse and growing and adding up. We know the sources of the pollution, especially on Long Island. We're using fertilizers. They wind up in the water. We have an inadequate sewer system. Septic systems made sense at one time, not when you have the concentration of septic systems that we have now. You know, in Long Island 60 years ago, it was fine. Why? Because you didn't have the density that you now have. But the density of septic that we have has saturated the ground soil. Sewage treatment, wastewater treatment, we took for granted. Not anymore. 500,000 septic systems in Suffolk County alone have to be addressed. And these are very expensive and complicated issues to put in a sewer infrastructure where it doesn't exist. It's especially bad on Long Island because of the geology of Long Island. It's a bar of sand, basically. And the sand is porous, and everything pours right through the sand and then sits in one basic aquifer. And all these years, all those chemicals wind up in the aquifer. The aquifer makes it to the coastline, but the aquifer is also the source of the drinking water. Now, you'd have to be blind to deny the evidence of the change. You see it everywhere. The so-called brown tide, which appeared out of nowhere in the 80s, nobody even understood what it was, but it's only getting worse and worse. Upstate New York, we have in lakes toxic algae blooms with a toxic bacteria in the algae. So it's not just in Long Island. We've had the same situation here. We tend to think of it on the coastline, but again, it is in the drinking water, and this is going to be the crisis of the next decade. Mark my words. We'll get more sophisticated in the testing of groundwater. You can't even find out from the federal EPA now what chemicals should be tested for. And you can't find out from the EPA what concentrations of those chemicals are dangerous. We will have more and more research, and then we'll get into a question of how do you filter the groundwater, and that's going to be very complicated. But no doubt, protecting our natural assets and these investments are the core mission for Long Island. We've been very aggressive. I'm proud to say we've been more aggressive than any state administration in history. I'm humble enough to say we're not going to do it alone. We're going to do it with partnerships, and that's exactly what this is all about. On the state side, we've been had a full agenda for the past several years. 2015, $5 million for the Nitrogen Action Plan. We launched the first Ocean Action Plan for 10 years, $400 million for water infrastructure, the highest amount for the Environmental Protection Fund in history, and we're proud of it. $40 million to start to build new sewage treatment plants in Smithtown, Kings Park, $3 million for Suffolk County and Stony Brook to develop advanced septic treatment technologies so the septic systems we do have work better, which is very important. It's unrealistic to say in our lifetime we're going to replace all the septic. I'd love to be able to say we're going to do that. I think it's cost prohibitive, and it is practically, from a functional point of view, prohibitive. Can we make those septic systems work better? That's a very real question. $900,000 for the Estuary Reserve. We're in partnership with Steve Ballone. That's why he's smiling, because he's getting a lot of money. That's when Steve smiles. If you want to see Steve Ballone smile, give him a big check. $380 million in partnership with Suffolk County to connect homes to the sewer systems. Same thing with Ed Mangano. We're going to give him financial assistance to address the Bay Park treatment facility, which has been a problem for years. It's polluting the surrounding waters, and we're looking for ways to use the Cedar Creek Ocean outfall. This year's budget, we did something special, and I applaud the legislature, especially Steve Engelbright, who is here. The largest amount of money ever invested in clean water, $2.5 billion for a Clean Water Infrastructure Act. It's a landmark investment, and again, it's targeted for drinking water, because I think that is the next crisis. We're also doing everything we can vis-a-vis the federal government. They are moving ahead with their dumping plan right at the mouth of the Sound, which makes absolutely no sense why you would dump dredged material in the Sound. We said if they approved it, we would sue them, and we're suing them. So aggressive is good, and aggressive and creative at the same time is also better. And we're going to get creative in this partnership. And we're going to enlist the help of Mother Nature with a little boost from the state. We've done a lot of research, especially through Stony Brook, on the use of clams and oysters as natural filters, right? Mother Nature knew what she was talking about. You're exactly right. Let's give them a round of applause. Mother Nature had a plan, and Mother Nature had a system. Our problem is we messed with Mother Nature's system. But clams and oysters were natural filters. We now have a problem that the water is so polluted that it has actually decimated that population. But they were natural filtration equipment, if you will. We've done a lot of research to determine how to restore the clam and oyster population and how to restore it in a way that they survive and they flourish. And we know what works and we know what doesn't work. We know that if you place them in appropriate concentrations, they can help filter pollutants and nutrients that cause toxic algae blooms. We know that they process the algae, they retain the nutrients, they actually remove nitrogen from the water. Clams about 25 gallons a day, oysters about 50 gallons of water per day. We've learned that placing more mature shellfish has a higher percentage of success because they're more resilient. In the past, juvenile shellfish have been placed and they didn't survive. The more mature shellfish have a higher survival rate. You need density is required for reproduction. Apparently, clams don't move around a lot during the reproductive process. I'll leave it at that. So you need a high level of density for the reproductive process to work. Mature shellfish can survive in marginal waters. In the past, they have been placed in areas of heavy pollution, and they don't survive in areas of heavy pollution. You can place them in a marginal area next to an area of heavy pollution, and they'll survive there, clean that water, that then dissipates the problem in the heavier polluted areas. Rhode Island tried a very big experiment in 2005. They made many of the mistakes that we just spoke about, and we are taking those lessons into consideration. But we want to use this resource, and we want to use this aggressively. We think it has great potential as a natural resource. We have to bring it to scale. So we're going to launch the most aggressive program in the United States of America to restore clams and oysters. We're going to do it here on Long Island because we think it can make a difference to the environment. We think it can make a difference to the economy. We're going to announce a $5.10 million shellfish restoration project all across Long Island. This is a product of working with the towns, the villages, the counties, academic universities, Cornell, Stony Brook, putting everybody together at the same table and coming up with a cooperative plan. And I want to thank right now, not just the county executives, but the supervisors who are here, our partners in local government, because everyone pitched in to make this work. Let's give them a round of applause. And it's going to work this way. We're going to establish 5 new shellfish sanctuary sites at areas that have been strategically identified by Stony Brook and Cornell, and areas that we know historically have problems with the quality of the water. Huntington Harbor, Hempstead Bay, South Oyster Bay, Bellport Bay, Shinnecock Bay. We're selecting those locations that we believe we can improve the water quality and the shellfish can survive and multiply. We're going to be planting mature shellfish at a rate that will allow reproduction and water filtration. We've custom designed the number of shellfish for each particular area. So you can see South Oyster Bay, 26 million. The variance is based on the variables and conditions of that water in that area. Producing enough shellfish the placement will produce enough shellfish to filter the water at these sites every 3 days, which would be remarkable. Now, we need to produce a significant number of oysters and clams, 179 million. We're going to invest $7.2 million in public hatcheries across Long Island to do that. Cornell Cooperative and Suffolk County will receive $5 million to expand their shellfish hatchery and plant this shellfish at the sanctuary sites. We want to thank Cornell and Suffolk for taking on that obligation. We'll also spend $2 million to invest in existing public hatcheries to increase their capacities. Town of Brookhaven has stepped up, and we want to thank them very much. Southampton, East Hampton, Hempstead, Islip, and the Shinnecock Nation will all increase their public hatchery capacity. They'll receive grants of approximately $400,000 each, and they'll be growing and providing the population that we're actually going to be placing. So let's give them a round of applause and thank them. The investment will support the entire life cycle of the shellfish from the beginning, where they spend their first few months in the hatcheries. They're then placed in floating nurseries, again, to make them more mature. We'll have 69 floating nurseries around Long Island. They'll be monitored by Cornell. The shellfish will become mature in those nurseries. They'll then be placed thereafter in the open water sites that we discussed. We're spending $3 million to jumpstart the program and obtaining 28 million adult shellfish from local distributors and hatcheries, harvesters that are doing it now. So rather than waiting to grow the first crop, we're actually going to purchase the first crop, so we start the program even sooner. And again, they'll be placed in the 5 sites. We're going to put together a Shellfish Restoration Council, monitor the results, find out what we're learning. If we have to tweak the program as we go along, we will. As I said, this is the most ambitious program ever done in the country. We expect to learn things as we go along. So we'll be studying, we'll be monitoring, and we'll make adjustments as we go along. SUNY Stony Brook, Cornell, Extension will be leading that effort for us. They'll monitor the sanctuaries and make sure we're having the maximum impact. These sanctuaries will be clearly marked with special buoys. There's obviously commercial harvesting. This is not a place where you should commercially harvest. There will be special buoys. They will be enforced. There will be strict penalties. The DEC will be enforcing these sanctuary sites, as well as local law enforcement will enforce these sanctuary sites, and we thank them for that. But these will be sites of high concentrations of clams and oysters that are there for a particular purpose. And any poaching on these sites is a serious offense, and we're going to take it seriously. Now, we know that the permitting process for hatcheries has been slightly cumbersome, some would say. Some would say that there's a fair amount of bureaucracy involved. Commissioner of DEC would not say that, but some would say that. But the Commissioner of DEC would say, to the extent there was any bureaucracy, it's going to be streamlined, and any application will be turned around within 30 days, is lightning speed for those who are familiar in the process, because we want to get these hatcheries functioning. We want to get it up and running. So that's the plan. 5 shellfish sanctuaries. We'll be monitoring it. If it works as well as we hope, we'll be expanding it to other locations around the island. $7 million to expand the public hatcheries that now exist. $3 million to jumpstart the program with adult shellfish. A Shellfish Restoration Council that will be studying the results, advising the program as we go along, and DEC will be moving all the applications, doing the enforcement to make sure it all works. New York knows what some of the other states know, but as you heard from the commissioner, what the federal government has failed to prioritize, which is protecting the environment. And we do take it very seriously in New York, and we're proud of it. Left unaddressed, the situation only gets worse. Time is not on our side. Every day, more fertilizer goes on the lawn, more nitrogen is going into the water, more chemicals are winding up in the aquifer. Every day. And that's why we have to be as aggressive and creative as we are. In many ways, we're just trying to restore the planet the way we had it, right? Restore the system to the balance that Mother Nature provided and that we have since distorted. We're trying to undo the damage that we did and get it back to a place of balance, because Mother Nature did know better. The shellfish, the clams and oysters were an essential, especially in this area of the country. It's what made Long Island, Long Island. It was one of the great attractions. Oyster Bay, the name, that's what given by the Dutch. Saladino says that he named it, but he really didn't. It was actually done by the Dutch. The Great South Bay was the hard clam factory. I mean, we were producing it for the entire country at one time. And now 99% of it is gone. Just think about that. Just think about what that means. You know, that's why the South Bay was clean. That's why it worked. We had all that natural filtration. That's all wiped out. It's all gone. The industry is gone. The people who did that is gone. And then the water is now getting dirtier and dirtier as part of it. Learn from our mistakes. We all make them. We are fallible. We are human beings. As a society, we make collective mistakes. We have abused the environment. Sometimes we did it unknowingly. Sometimes we did it knowingly. But we have to remediate the damage that we did. We're doing that all across the state. We have acid rain in some of the most beautiful lakes in the Adirondacks that are in the middle of forests, that are pristine, but you have acid rain from the clouds. All the manufacturing that was done in upstate New York left a stain, literally, from the industrial era that's now in the aquifer. Here on Long Island, Grumman was a great economic engine. And we now have the residue of Grumman in the what's called the Grumman plume, right? So that's what we're trying to make up for. Because at the end of the day, it's very simple. Someone put us here. Some of us believe God put us here for a limited period of time on this earth. And it goes very, very fast. And we have one simple obligation: to leave this place better than we found it. To leave our children a home that is better than we found it. The Native Americans have a beautiful proverb that says, we did not inherit the earth from our parents. We are borrowing it from our children. We are stewards of the environment. We are stewards of the environment. And we have to make sure at the end of our day, when our day is done, and our children inherit this place, inherit Long Island, they inherit a Long Island that is cleaner and better and safer than the Long Island that we had. This is a big step in the right direction. I thank you all for coming. I'm excited about it. I think this is going to be a national precedent. I think we'll learn along the way, but it is the right direction. And I want to thank all our partners in local government, in the academic institutions, and especially the two county executives, without whose help this wouldn't happen. And you're now going to hear from County Executive Steve Ballone and County Executive Ed Mangano, and you'll understand why they're smiling. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. First of all, it's great to be here at the Halesite Fire Department, and I want to thank all the members of the department. We understand how important our first responders are, and we saw once again with Hurricane Harvey just what they do for us on a daily basis. So thank you to all of our first responders here in this department and across Suffolk County. Proud to be here. Really proud to be here with all of my colleagues, all of whom share the governor's concerns about water quality and are doing great things here, because this is not a partisan issue. This is something that we all care deeply about, and it's wonderful to have a governor who not only is working on this critical issue, water quality, all across this state, leading in New York State, but leading in the country as well. But to have a governor who understands the issue on a deep level and how personal and how critical it is to us on Long Island and what it means to us on Long Island. And, you know, we know that water is everything to us here on this island. It is our quality of life. It is our heritage. It is our recreation. It is our economy. Our entire $5 billion tourism economy is underpinned by water quality. The water we drink is beneath our feet, as the governor pointed out. And we know from Superstorm Sandy that water can be a threat to us as well. And it's why it's so important that we remediate the pollution and restore our natural protections, our coastal vegetation. And everything the governor has done is helping us to do just that. We are incredibly fortunate to have him as a leader and a partner in this effort, which is the most important effort that we are engaged in on this island. And I'll tell you something quickly. The thing I love about this governor is, you know, we're in this business and there's a lot of talk about doing things. And there's a lot of talk, and then usually there's more talk, and then usually there's a task force, and usually there's some more meetings after that. This governor gets things done. We were on a boat several months ago, and Senator Engelbright was on that boat, and Supervisor Romaine, Supervisor Schneiderman, and Adrian Esposito, and some of our environmental leaders. And we're on the boat, and I'm going on the boat, and I'm going to put some clams in the water with the governor. Well, I watched the governor on the boat basically assemble everyone together. Dr. Gobler, all the experts, Cornell was there. Start peppering everyone with questions, gathering information. We're just watching this whole thing. We dump the clams in the water, start heading back. On the way back, now he's meeting with Assemblyman Engelbright, a great environmental leader, and some of our other leaders in the state talking about, all right, here's the initiative, how are we going to fund it? And several months later, we are here together as a region with the governor announcing the largest shellfish restoration program in the country. That's leadership, that's getting things done, and that's why we are improving water quality on Long Island. And I want to say thank you, Governor, for what you do and for your leadership. And with that, I welcome my good friend and colleague, Nassau County Executive Ed Mangano.
Thank you, Steve. Certainly great to be here today and join with you all. Certainly to be with our first responders, especially when we're not responding to a disaster. It's always a good thing. I think the governor will bear that out. And it's just wonderful that we have all these people brought here together under really the leadership of Governor Cuomo. We have to really recognize that we have a governor here that's right on the environment, right for Long Island. And to echo Steve's words, really in very much a nonpartisan way, he's always there to help you solve the problem. And we know one of the most biggest problems is bureaucracy. And if you listen to the governor, he's telling you how he breaks through that bureaucracy and get things done. I mean, we have studies and task forces, as Steve said, that have gone nowhere. But when you sit with this governor and you sit with some of the experts and the community leaders, environmental leaders, you find a solution time and time again with the support of the legislature. This governor has found the money to spend it correctly and efficiently to bring about the desired result. And in this case, it's to protect our water supply. In the name of industrialization and progress, we've let our water supply be damaged. Certainly in the name of defense, and from my community where we grew up next to Grumman, we see the ravages that has occurred in our environment, from groundwater contamination, ground contamination, soil vapor contamination, and it really takes innovation to begin to reverse that trend. And that's what you're seeing here today. And that's why I love this governor. He does the right thing for all the people. And I want to say, Governor, let's give you a big round of applause for the work you're doing here. Because certainly the outcome of this is going to directly benefit the future generations when they go to their aquifer and not have to deal with heavy metals that are in their aquifer, and not have to deal with pesticides that are in their aquifer, and not have to deal with carcinogens and the effect on the public health that we have to deal with. And that's going to be because of all of you, through the leadership of our great governor, Governor Cuomo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for coming. Certainly a wonderful event, wonderful program. We look forward to launching it with all of your help. Thank you very much.